Sometimes, after watching certain videos, you just find it hard to view the world in the same way. This is exactly how this video would make you feel. Check it out if you think you can stand it. Have you ever been in a situation where you see something and you think to yourself that what you just saw could not have possibly occurred? Maybe your senses were deceiving you, and as they say, if it was not caught on camera, then it sure as hell didn't happen. But in this clip, you would see a series of events you never would have believed actually happened.
Terrifying videos caught on camera.
Let's go down to court, sir. Let's do it steady. Oh no, it's right now. Look. Ah!
待って、マジでやばい、マジでやばい、マジでやばい、マジでやばい。
No mames, no mames, no mames, no mames, no mames.
Que se abra la puerta. Que se abra.
No posible.
Hello.
Bos? Ito na, boss? Yo, kung siya nagtingog, oy?
Who's that knocking at my door?
Do you believe in ghost stories? This is a clip that tells the tale of a Pakistani man and his encounter with a woman that would take him to the place she died. After watching this video, there is a high chance that you might want to question your disbelief.
This is a true horrifying story that took place in Pakistan. This story was submitted by Amna. In the early 2000s, a young Pakistani man worked in the Jinnah International Airport in Karachi. He would always ride his motorcycle to work and he only did night shifts. One night, he finished his duty, hopped on his bike, and started driving home. All the roads were empty as it was past midnight. As he was driving, he saw a woman sitting on the edge of the road crying. He was hesitant to approach, but he felt bad and approached her anyways. He asks, "Is everything okay?" She says, "I forgot my way home. Can you take me?" He says, "Of course." The woman hops on the back seat of the motorcycle and he starts driving down. The woman in the back seat starts sharing stories to this man. She tells him stories about the Pakistan and India partition in 1947 and how many people suffered and died during that era. And she would tell these stories very vividly, as if she lived back in these times. Moments later, she points at a deserted area on the side of the highway and she says, "This is where I died." He looks at her hand as she points and he realizes that this isn't an ordinary human being. His spine shivers from fear. He jumps off his motorcycle at a very high speed. He starts running with his injured arms and legs. He looks behind to see if the woman is behind him, and there she was, standing still from a distance without a single scratch. He luckily sees a police car approaching and he loses his mind. He explains everything to the police officer while the woman still stands and stares at him from a distance. The second he gets inside the police car, the woman vanishes. What could this be? Who is this woman?
What do you know about the story of the butcher from Uganda? Do you even have an idea of the actions he took part in, or perhaps his real name? This clip speaks about the butcher of Uganda and the number of murders he committed over a small period. Funny thing is, he never had to pay for any of the criminal acts he reportedly committed.
The Butcher of Uganda. His real name was Idi Amin, but his nickname was much more appropriate, seeing as he was directly responsible for over 300,000 deaths. He was a military officer until he found out the president was planning to arrest him, so he launched a military coup and declared he was the new president. In the first year of rule, he killed over 5,000 people, and that was his slowest year, but his nickname came from a style of execution. He didn't kill them, and neither did his troops kill him. Whether it be a school, or a household, or an ethnic group, it didn't matter. They were made to line up, and the second person in line was given a hammer. That person would be ordered to hit the first person in line over the head with the hammer until they were dead. And once they were, they passed the hammer to the person behind him, and they'd be bludgeoned to death themselves. Repeat until everyone's dead. And the butcher loved to watch, so when he was there, the process included a machete, and nobody wanted to die like this. Not even his troops. So many of them fled to Tanzania, where Amin waged war, and lost. So he was forced to flee himself to Saudi Arabia. Idi Amin, the man who chopped off his wife's limbs, ate his own people, stored heads in a freezer, and tortured hundreds of thousands of people, lived comfortably in Saudi Arabia until 2003, where he fell into a coma and passed away peacefully in his sleep from old age.
In the next clip you are about to watch, you would come across 3 photos that are considered one of the rarest photos to ever be taken of all time. In one of these examples, it is still unknown who had the boldness to take the picture.
Top 3 rare photos from history. Number 3. Dropping bombs used to actually mean a person was dropping them. This is over 100 years old technology. Get up in a plane and drop the bombs by hand. But also, other objects like nails would rain down at high speeds to penetrate helmets of the enemies. Number 2. And just a year later, giving a good look as the past repeating itself. A boy just staying in front of a downtown Seattle movie theater, which was closed from the public gathering proclamation because of the Spanish flu. It's interesting that humans are pretty much just the same throughout recent history. Non-essentials not working, sickness flare-ups, masks, and death will continue to come and go as it pleases, no matter the best doctor's efforts or crazy conspiracy theorist reasonings. And number 1, photos have strictly been prohibited inside the US Supreme Court while it's in session. That's why it makes only 2 pictures, the only ones to exist. In 1932, German photographer Erich Salomon faked a broken arm to sneak in the camera and take this photo. And the only other one is just 5 years later. A young woman cut a hole in her purse, they hid a camera taking this picture. It was published in Time magazine and spread far and wide. Yet, the young woman was never actually identified, and at this point, most likely never will be.
Ever heard of the Incel Society? I assure you, this is not something you want to be caught off guard about. Check this clip out for better insight into some Incel Society killers.
Incel killers. If you don't know what an incel is, which I find that hard to believe, incel means involuntarily celibate, or someone who is unable to find a romantic partner. Their ideology lies in misogyny, and they believe in male supremacy. And if you aren't already waist deep into the incels, this is gonna sound crazy, but their main goal is disruption and distribution. They believe the world is run by beautiful men, codenamed Chad, and beautiful women, codenamed Stacy. Average people are normies, and incels are the untouchables, wanted by no one. They think if they can kill enough Chads, they will have enough power to overtake all the normies, and entrap all the Stacys, who would pretty much be prisoners of the Incel Society. As absurd as it sounds, we've actually seen some cases where people have tried to start the Incel uprising. Alec Minason. who committed the vehicle ramming attack on April 23, 2018, in a rented van. He targeted random people in Ontario, Canada, and ended up killing 10 people and injuring 16 other.
Elliot Rodger decided to essentially commit an uprising, a beta uprising, if you will,
Right.
against the Chads and the Stacys.
It was Elliot Rodger who was the father. Of
Basically,
this.
the founding forefather of the entire movement.
Right, right. So explain to me this movement. What's this movement about?
It's basically a movement of angry incels, such as myself, who are unable to get laid. Therefore, we want to overthrow the Chads, which would force the Stacys to be forced to reproduce with the incels.
Right.
In his interrogation after explaining incels and his motives, he cited being inspired by his friend, Elliot Rodgers. Elliot is said to be the leader and the beginner of this uprising. He's had many videos on why Stacys don't go after gentlemen such as himself. His own crimes include killing 3 people by stabbing and 4 people by shooting. So far, incels have only killed 50 people in the US and Canada combined, but claim to only be at the beginning of their uprising. They also claim to be the far-right heroes ready to eliminate any human who stand in their way on their journey to redistribute women to their liking. Luckily, or unluckily depending on who you are, their efforts have been set back time and time again by, as they say, cancel culture, as it repetitively bans their communities to stop the outreach to more members of their terrorist rhetoric. As it stands right now, it doesn't look like incels will be taking over any countries. If hillbillies can take over the capital, I don't think a couple of untouchables can take over the world. But that's just my opinion.
The Boy in the Box. This is a clip that shows how the identity of the parents of the boy in the box was figured out. It is most stunning that the rest of the family members would have no idea that the DNA samples collected would be in relation to the boy in the box until 48 hours into the press conference that reveals his parents' identity.
The parents of Joseph Augustus Zarelli, the young boy who was only known as the boy in the box for 65 years, have been identified. If you don't know the story of the boy in the box, I covered it in my Cold Cases Solved playlist or on episode 165 of my podcast, Inhuman. So Augustus Gus Zarelli and Mary Elizabeth Betsy Abel are believed to be the parents of Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Betsy would have been 21 years old when Joseph was born on January 13th, 1953. Relatives of Betsy submitted DNA for genealogical research, allowing Identifiers International to build out her family tree, and investigators contacted the 5 Abel sisters, including Betsy, asking about who was pregnant when they were trying to identify Joseph's mother. The family said that the Abel family only learned that the investigation was about the boy in the box 48 hours before the press conference, and they were stunned as they remembered hearing about the cold case when he was first found. Betsy's family say that she loved skating and dancing, and she swooned over Italian boys, and she loved Frank Sinatra and would wear out the needle on his records at her home in Philadelphia. She graduated high school in North Philadelphia in 1949. She had a daughter born in 1950 who she put up for adoption, and family members say she may have put Joseph up for adoption after his birth in 1953. Betsy worked as a cashier at the Goldman Theater and eventually married the manager of the theater, John Plunkett, and they had 4 children together, and Betsy passed away in 1991 after battling lung cancer. Family members of Betsy have said that they have no reason to believe that she was responsible for Joseph's death. The relative of Betsy that spoke a lot in this article said, "Betsy, no way in the world. There was no cruelty, no meanness or cruelty that swelled within her heart and soul." Gus, the father, was a concrete and stoneman, a hard worker in a proud family of Italian immigrants in West Philadelphia, and he went on to have 4 children. The attorney representing Gus and his children said each of his children is extraordinarily sympathetic to the death of this young boy and horrified by the events that are being discussed. However, until recently, they had never heard of any of this. They have never been shown anything that links their father or any member of their family to this. According to the attorney, the Zarelli family is investigating if there is any merit to Gus being the father, as they've been given very little information from the police. They've said that there's no evidence that Gus had any knowledge of this child. Gus Zarelli passed away in 2014 at the age of 87. At this time, the death of Joseph Augustus Zarelli remains an active homicide investigation, and they are continuing to try to find who did this to this young boy.
Which of these clips do you think is more frightening? We eagerly await your feedback.